When soldiers faced freezing nights before the invention of modern sleeping bags, survival came down to one thing: understanding the land itself. During the Second World War, countless troops in the Eastern Front and the Alps learned a secret that didn't rely on wool, canvas, or down feathers. They learned to trap heat directly from the ground beneath them. It was a forgotten method that used soil, ash, and natural insulation layers to create warmth that could last through sub-zero nights. This was no theory. This was survival engineering born from desperation and observation. If you're a true history enthusiast or survivalist, this trick will make you see dirt in a completely different way. And before we dive deep into it, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning so you don't miss more lost techniques like this, methods that turned freezing battlefields into lessons modern survivalists still can't fully replicate. Soldiers learned early that the ground itself could be a heater when handled correctly. During WWII, especially on the Eastern Front, where temperatures could plunge below -40 degrees Celsius, soldiers couldn't always rely on blankets or fires. Firelight could give away positions to the enemy, and sleeping bags were scarce or too bulky for quick retreats. The solution came from observation. Troops began noticing that freshly dug earth, especially dark, moist soil, retained a surprising amount of heat beneath its surface. It wasn't magic, it was physics. Even when the air temperature dropped dangerously low, just 30 centimeters below the surface, the ground remained significantly warmer. By learning how to harness that trapped warmth, soldiers discovered a way to insulate their bodies naturally. The process was simple but required precision. They'd dig a shallow trench about a foot deep and line it with a layer of dry material, usually straw, pine needles, or even spare cloth torn from uniforms. Then came a thin layer of dry soil, enough to prevent direct contact with the cold ground. Finally, they'd lie down and cover themselves with another layer of soil, leaving only their faces exposed. What they created was an earthen cocoon, a pocket of body heat trapped between insulating layers. Within minutes, the soldiers' own warmth would begin to build, stabilized by the soil's natural thermal mass. You know, it might sound a bit primitive, but the real effectiveness of this method actually came from the way soil stores and transfers heat. Soil has what scientists like to call thermal inertia, which basically means it changes temperature pretty slowly. Once it's warmed by your body, it keeps that warmth locked in, rather than letting it escape to the cold air. At the same time, the upper layer of soil acts as a barrier, reflecting heat downward while shielding a soldier from those freezing winds. The deeper layer below acts like a mild thermal reservoir. It's not exactly warm, but it's definitely not as cold as the air above, so it creates a temperature buffer. This meant soldiers weren't losing heat to the open air. They were actually sleeping in a kind of natural heat trap. This technique turned out to be a real lifesaver, not just for German and Soviet soldiers, but also for stranded pilots and partisan fighters who couldn't risk lighting fires at night. Modern survivalists who've tested this method in Arctic conditions have found it can raise perceived body temperature comfort levels by as much as 10 degrees Celsius compared to lying directly on snow or ice. So, in essence, it was a primitive sleeping bag, made out of the earth itself. For anyone interested in applying this forgotten skill out in the wilderness today, it's totally possible, and honestly extremely effective when done safely. The first step is all about location. You want to avoid frozen, saturated ground or any spots prone to flooding. Look for soil that's firm but still workable. Using a small shovel or even just a flat rock, dig a trench about a foot deep and just wide enough to lie in. Next, you'll need some insulation materials. Dry leaves, grass, or pine needles work best. Lay them down to create a soft, dry barrier between you and the soil below. This helps prevent moisture from sapping your body heat. Then lie down and pull an outer layer of soil, about 2 to 3 inches thick, over yourself. It might feel a bit odd at first, but within 10 to 15 minutes you'll start to notice the trapped warmth. The soil layer seals in your body heat, while the inner organic layer keeps the cold from conducting up from below. If you can, line the top of the soil with dry ash or fine sand. WT soldiers often did this because it absorbed moisture and helped prevent frost from forming overnight. This simple combo, soil, dry filler and body heat, could honestly make the difference between shivering all night and actually getting some real rest in freezing weather. In longer encampments, soldiers started improving on this technique by adding wooden planks or thin metal sheets under the trench to keep it dry. Others built what they called foxhole heaters, using small tins filled with coals buried right beside the sleeping pit. The radiant heat from the coals would warm the surrounding soil, which then released steady warmth for hours. This was really the earliest form of an underground radiant heater, centuries ahead of modern radiant flooring. Soviet troops, who were pretty ingenious in harsh conditions, sometimes mixed straw and clay into their trench linings. This mixture dried into a semi-solid shell that reflected heat while keeping out moisture. German units stationed up in the Carpathians even recorded sleeping in temperatures of -25 degrees Celsius using nothing but earthen insulation and a bit of felt padding. In today's world of ultralight tents and high-tech thermal gear, it's easy to forget that survival used to be all about reading the land. This WT soil insulation method is a timeless reminder that sometimes the best tools are literally beneath our feet. Knowing how to use the ground as a heat source is still a critical part of survival training. It doesn't require any equipment, no fire, and no signal, just knowledge and effort. For preppers, campers and cold-weather explorers, mastering this technique really means mastering the most reliable heat source in nature, the Earth itself. It's proof that the lessons learned in war can still protect lives in peace. So, if you value learning lost survival methods and forgotten engineering from the past, make sure you're subscribed to In the Beginning and share this video with others who appreciate history's most practical secrets. These aren't just stories. They're survival skills that once meant the difference between freezing and fighting another day.